distinguished guests sitting in the front row, the faculty, young students, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am not going to speak on design. I am going to speak on the design which I worked in Kashmir. I will give you an insight of Jammu and Kashmir, the little history, what happened after Pulwama, and what made us remove Article 370 and 35A, and what is Article 370 and 35A. Since we are running behind schedule, I'll go straight on to the topic. Can we have the PPT, please? Yeah. I want to talk to this audience today because you are a young, energetic audience who are very live and very active on the social media. You engage with people, you discuss issues. There is a lot of propaganda, there is a lot of false narrative by Pakistan, which is thrown around. I want you to be educated enough to counter that propaganda. So I'll be giving certain facts, and whatever I speak today, it can be Googled, it is there on the official websites. This is just a preview. This is how I laid out my presentation today. Before I go into the history of Jammu and Kashmir, I'll talk about myself for about 10 seconds. I am General Dhillon. I was commissioned in the Rajputana Rifles, that is an infantry regiment, in 1983. I am an ex-NDA. I have had 7 tenures in Jammu and Kashmir, 6 of them specifically in Kashmir Valley. Starting September 1988, I am first-hand witness of when the terrorism started in 1989. I am a witness of 19th January 90 events when Kashmiri Pandits exodus started from the valley. I was there during Kargil, I was there during Parakram. I was 4 days old corps commander when Pulwama happened, and how we killed those chaps within 100 hours. That clip was from that press conference where that famous statement came into Kitne Ghazi aaye, kitne Ghazi gaye. I was there when Article 370 was removed. So I will tell you first-hand information of what is Kashmir and what happened in Kashmir. When people talk about Kashmir, you must understand this is a map of Jammu and Kashmir as it existed on 15th of August 1947. And thereafterwards, when Maharaja of Kashmir acceded to India, this was the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And by only the area, the percentages are given, and Kashmir Valley per se is only 7.7% of Jammu and Kashmir. So must understand the narrative of Pakistan. Kashmir Valley is only 7.7% and it's not the whole of Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir is much bigger. It includes Gilgit-Baltistan, it includes Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, it includes Aksai Chin, which has been illegally ceded to China by Pakistan. So don't get carried away by Kashmir, 7.7% being Jammu and Kashmir. Now this is the demographic distribution as it exists as per the 2011 census. And this does not include the 3 lakh plus Kashmiri Pandits who are shifted or who are pushed out of Kashmir Valley, and they were staying in various camps and various cities all across India and the world. This slide is important. The top 2 and the bottom left pie chart is almost similar to the rest of the country. This bottom right, age profile, this again is 2011 census. Why I am showing this is, if you see the bottom right pie, 62% of the Kashmir population in 2011 was below 30 years of age. If you do the same transposition now, maybe 66-67% of Kashmiris, or people of Jammu and Kashmir, are below 30 years of age. Why this is important? This is important because these 67% of Kashmiri population was born after 1989. That is when the terrorism started. That means the young generation, or 2/3 of population, grew up in the gun culture. They grew up with the scars Their psyche is scarred by the culture which they have seen. They have seen people being killed by terrorists. They have seen people dying in explosions. They have seen people dying in IEDs. They have seen the houses being destroyed in encounters. They have grown with the issue there. So when a Kashmiri talks to you and he tells you he has a problem, please don't wish it away. There is an issue there. His psyche has been, the radicalization has happened. The killings have happened. His cousins, his brothers, his friends have joined terrorism and died. His parents, his uncles, his aunties have been killed mercilessly by the terrorists. He has seen bloodshed. So please grant that boy or the girl her or his due. He has an issue there. We must understand that as very, very informed society. Jammu and Kashmir is in India in itself. The religious, the demography, religion and demography, and the combination of the whole thing. Like they say it in Hindi, wo ek guldasta hai. It's a beautiful bouquet of flowers. All religions, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, Buddhist, all religions are there in Jammu and Kashmir. And let me tell you, there never had been a single instance of communal rights in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. In spite of diversity like this. The terrorism started in 1989, then thereafterwards, religion-based killings did take place. But the public at large lived in harmony, lived in peace with each other. And just an instance for you, in Kashmir, cow beef and the pork is not sold openly in the market as a mark of respect for each other's feelings. That is Kashmiriyat. Little more about it a little later. Now going to the history. You would have heard the UN resolution, lot of propaganda. You would have heard a lot of propaganda on how the accession took place, the legalities of it. I'll come to 370 and 35 years later. Maharaja Hari Singh was the ruler of state of Jammu and Kashmir, as I showed you the map on the first slide. On 14th of August or 15th of August, when Pakistan came into being or was carved out of India, which already existed. Like all other states, there were two types of areas under the British Empire. One was which was governed directly by the Viceroy, and others were where the state kings or the rulers were still existing, and they used to report to the Viceroy. So area which was directly under the Viceroy, that came directly under the control of India. The princely states which had a ruler was given the choice either to go with India or with Pakistan. They all made their choices and accordingly they went either way. Maharaja Hari Singh was also given the same choice. On 12th of August, he asked for some more time to decide about it. So there is something called standstill agreement. So that standstill agreement came into being, which allowed the Maharaja to take a little more time to decide which way he wants to go. 2 days after that, 14th of August, Pakistan came into being. The dates are important. Pakistan came into being after an agreement was signed with Maharaja, which gave him more time. But Pakistan was in a hurry. Pakistan did not wait. And Pakistan sent in the Razakars or the raiders or the Qabalis. They were the people who were basically herds of tribesmen controlled by Pakistan Army, officered by Pakistan Army, and they walked into Kashmir. And when they came to Baramulla, they plundered Baramulla, they plundered Uri, they plundered Mohra. The rapes took place, the buildings were destroyed, the killings took place. So by the time they reached the outskirts of Srinagar, that is when Maharaja decided to accede to India. Indian state or Indian army did not intervene till that time because we as a new nation were very clear we were still agreeing to the standstill agreement. We were a law-abiding nation. This is when Maharaja acceded to the Indian Union That is when the Indian Army was flown in, the 1st Sikh Regiment landed in Srinagar, and they pushed back these Qabalis, the raiders, much beyond what is the line of control today. For the reasons I am not going into, that is where the ceasefire occurred, and that is where subsequently became the line of control, or popularly called as LC these days. Some area continued to be with Pakistan, which is now called Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So Indian part of the Kashmir is legally acceded to the Union of India by the Maharaja, like all other princely states who acceded to the Union of India at that time. And the instrument of accession is same as was for other states. Not a word change. Now the point about, there is a lot of Pakistani propaganda on UN resolution says there should be a referendum, there should be a plebiscite. But what the propaganda does not say, when will the plebiscite take place? There is a lot of propaganda again on why did we go to the UN. You must understand, after the Second World War, which was a bloody war, where so many innocent lives were lost, United Nations came into being. United Nations came into being with the aim and charter of resolving the issues between the nations in a peaceful manner, without letting the nations go to war and lose precious lives. India was a country which had just got its independence, and as an independent, responsible state, we probably thought United Nations is a now organization which will resolve issues peacefully. And India has always been a peace-loving country over the 5,000 years of our history. We have never invaded any country. So maybe on those lines, or those understandings, we thought probably United Nations will do a good job of it. And we as a responsible nation went to a responsible world body organization. That's a different thing. United Nations failed miserably and failed in all other aspects also. But coming back to what Pakistan says, that United Nations resolution says there should be plebiscite in Kashmir. You must understand what is the United Nations resolution saying. United Nations resolution has 3 parts. And these 3 parts are sequential in implementation. They are subject to the first being implemented, then the second will start. And what is the first part? First part is the government of Pakistan will withdraw all its forces and all its tribals from the state of Jammu and Kashmir, the complete map, and also stop furnishing any material aid to those fighting in that area. This is the first condition of the United Nations resolution. Pakistan Army did not withdraw from the Jammu and Kashmir. Even today they are occupying the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. They did not stop abetting the terrorism. Even today they are abetting the terrorism in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So first condition has not been met, which was the responsibility of Pakistan. If this condition was met, then the second condition would have come into being. Second condition is the government of India, when it is established to the satisfaction of the committee which is coordinating this whole thing, that Pakistanis are moved out, government of India will withdraw its forces, but leave a certain portion behind, which will be responsible for ensuring law and order. Now, once that is done, then is the third part, which will be referendum or plebiscite will take place. Then the people will decide which way they want to go. But Pakistan did not complete the first part. So whenever someone talks to you or tells you that as per the UN resolution there is supposed to be a plebiscite or a referendum, which India is not allowing, please tell him back there are 2 more things which are supposed to happen before that. And first is the responsibility of Pakistan, which it has not so far implemented or complied with. This is more than 350,000 Kashmiri Pandits who had to leave their homes, their homelands, their Rozi Roti, and fled to Jammu. Well-to-do families were staying in tents. I know friends who have grown up in tents, where they had a flourishing lifestyle, flourishing business back home in Kashmir. They have found their roots again, they have found their businesses again. But the history has not been kind to this community. Now I'll briefly, since this is a short time, I will briefly touch upon 370 and 35A. This has been abrogated when I was the Corps Commander there. As Corps Commander, I was responsible for complete activity on the line of control and across the line of control, including in POK. We did carry out offensive actions or the actions in Pakistan occupied Kashmir against the terrorists and the terrorist launch pads. As the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister sab says, घर में घुस के मारेंगे, घर में घुस के मारा वहां पे हमने. So what is Article 370? Article 370, like I told you, Jammu and Kashmir became the accession document was signed in 1947. This article was not a condition in the document of accession. This article was not even existing when Jammu and Kashmir became part of India. This article was inserted in the constitution much later. And this article, it is written, was temporary and transitional. That means it's not a permanent article. And what did this article say? This article said, all the provisions of Constitution of India will not be applicable to the subjects of Jammu and Kashmir. This article is not religious specific, or it is not specific to any particular religion. It is applicable to all the subjects of the Jammu and Kashmir, irrespective of their religious belief or faith. That means all subjects of Jammu and Kashmir, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, or any other caste, religion, were coming under the impact of this. And when I say the constitutional provisions of Indian Constitution will not be implemented in J&K, what does it mean? Constitution has been amended 106 times post-independence. That means 106 new articles have come in which were for the welfare of the state or welfare of the people. Those were never made applicable in Jammu and Kashmir because of this. I'll give you a few examples. Right to Information Act. Such a powerful act wherein you can question the government, you can just put in a 10 rupees or 100 rupees paper, this non-judicial paper, and you can ask for any information. Of this building has been constructed by the government, you can ask who is the contractor, how much money, when was it paid, what were the installments paid, what was the material used. Because government is utilizing your money. But this, because of Article 370, Right to Information Act was not made applicable in Jammu and Kashmir. You could not question the government there. Another, Human Act. There was a practice in olden days, the students may not know it, where the human excreta was carried by another human on his or her head and carried to a different place and dumped there. This was an inhuman act, inhuman thing to do. There is an act which says scavenging, as it is called, is unlawful. Anyone who forces other person to do this will be punished. This act did not get implemented in Jammu and Kashmir because of Article 370. So all the good provisions, 106 of them of Indian constitutional amendments, did not get transferred to the subjects of Jammu and Kashmir, of all the religions. So this act was discriminatory to the public of Jammu and Kashmir. So when it was abrogated on 5th of August, it was welcomed because now all the provisions of Indian Constitution which are applicable to any other citizen of India were made applicable to people of Jammu and Kashmir. Now Article 35A. Article 35A decides who is a citizen of Jammu and Kashmir or domicile of Jammu and Kashmir. Now this is again discriminatory. One major provision in this is if I have a son and a daughter, my son marries outside Jammu and Kashmir or marries a girl who is not a subject of Jammu and Kashmir, he does not loses his inheritance rights or my property. If he marries a girl from Kerala or from Europe, he will continue to inherit the property of the father. But if my daughter marries a boy from Madhya Pradesh or from Afghanistan or from USA, the daughter loses the inheritance rights and the subject or domicile of Jammu and Kashmir. So it was gender biased. it was biased against 50% of the population of the Jammu and Kashmir state. Now, another aspect, the non-state children, the children of the non-subjects, were not allowed admission in the schools, in the government schools. I must tell you something more interesting. When partition happened, people were displaced from today's Pakistan, from today's India to this way or that way. Like my family came in from what is today Pakistan. But moment we came down to Punjab, we were given the equal amount of land which we held in Pakistan. We were given a similar house. And from day one, we were citizens of India, we were domicile of Punjab. But people who came to Jammu and Kashmir from West Pakistan, as it is called those days, because East Pakistan is now Bangladesh, the people who settled in Jammu and Kashmir did not enjoy the privilege of domicile of Jammu and Kashmir till 5th of August 2019. They were stateless people in the state of India. They were citizens of India, but they were not domicile of Jammu and Kashmir. They were contributing to the economy of Jammu and Kashmir, but they were not enjoying the fruits of domicile of Jammu and Kashmir. They could not vote in the Panchayat elections, they could not vote in the District Development Council elections. But they could vote, they could not vote in the State Assembly elections, but they could vote for Parliament. Because the Indian state gave them the Indian citizenship. First time after 5th of August, when Article 370 and 35 were abrogated, that is when they voted in 2020 in the District Development Council elections. Imagine a person staying in the state for 75 years and not having a basic right of being from that state. So these acts were discriminatory. No one tells you this. Pakistani propaganda only talks about 370, our privileges have been taken away. 106 additional privileges have been given, not taken away. 35A, our identity has been taken away. No sir, identity has been given to the girl. Identity has been given to that West Pakistani refugee. Because of this 35A, international companies could not come and do business in Jammu and Kashmir. Job creation was not there. Employment opportunities were not there. Foreign investment was not coming. These were the problems, and you must understand there is a very important correlation between history. 1989, the terrorism started in Jammu and Kashmir. 1990, Indian economy opened up to the world economy. And all the multinationals and world is a global village concept came into being. Jammu and Kashmir lost this opportunity by 30 years plus because of terrorism. No development, no economic investment could happen in Jammu and Kashmir because of 35A, and secondly because of the security situation. If my family in 1990 owned a scooter and a cycle, today my family owns 4 cars. Whereas reverse is true in Jammu and Kashmir. Because no investment came in, 35A, no investment came in, terrorism. Loss of life is a separate subject. So you must understand why 370 and 35 had to go. It's only questionable why it did not go earlier. Why wait for 75 years or 73 years? So it was a historic decision implemented with 100% conviction and utmost peaceful way of doing it. Most of these points I've already covered. Since these articles were there, accountability of the government of Jammu and Kashmir was very limited. Nobody could put question. And now coming to the bifurcation of state of Jammu and Kashmir. Ladakh has been made a separate union territory and Jammu and Kashmir is a separate union territory. This again, there is a lot of propaganda. But this is not the first time in the history of India this has been done. 12 times earlier the states have been bifurcated or trifurcated for the ease of administration. Punjab has been trifurcated into Punjab, Haryana and Himachal Pradesh. Bihar into Bihar and Jharkhand. Chhattisgarh has come out, and 12 times this has happened. And now I will tell you, people who have traveled to Ladakh and Kashmir, now imagine there is a state and great mighty Himalayas, like Mr. Prahlad Kakkad said in the morning, the mighty Himalayas are bifurcating the state. Ladakh portion is the other side and Kashmir is this side. And there is only one connecting road, Zojila Pass. In earlier days, Zojila Pass used to remain snow-covered and non-motorable for 7 months in a year. Now with improved equipment and all, it remains closed for about 4 to 5 months. Imagine you cannot travel to your state capital for 7 months. And if you have to go to your state capital, you have to come down to Jammu by flight or go to Srinagar by flight or come by Manali route and go by road. How many poor people can afford this? The governance at your doorstep principle was defied or denied to them. They could not approach their governing headquarters for 5 to 7 months. Now that is the administrative constraint which forced the government to bifurcate Ladakh. Again, it's not on religion basis. Everything has been made to believe that everything happened because of a religion bias. All the subjects of Ladakh, irrespective of their religion affinity, are now under the UT of Ladakh. Pakistan, I don't have to say much on this, 1989 onwards, continues terrorism. Peace is not going to be allowed to come in. And small thing I want to tell here, Kashmiri Pandits were the mainstay, like since I'm standing in an educational institution, I must say this, Kashmiri Pandits were the mainstay of Jammu and Kashmir's education system. Primary teachers were mainly Kashmiri Pandits, higher secondary teachers, university professors, deans, vice chancellors, all were Kashmiri Pandits. When Kashmiri Pandits were thrown out of Jammu and Kashmir, from Kashmir, the education system collapsed. The quality teachers, they went missing. And then combined with this was the first thing which the terrorists did in 89. I was a young captain there in Kashmir. They burned down all the schools. Those days there used to be wooden buildings of pine wood. And pine wood has oil in it, it burns like a furnace. They burned down all the schools, all the teachers of Kashmiri Pandit origin were thrown out. The education system suffered. Now that was the aim, that any society which is educated society will question your actions. So aim was not to let the Kashmiri society get education so that they don't question the designs of Pakistan. I'm rushing a little because I want to take on some questions because that gives a lot of things. Now this is how today Kashmir is peaceful. Stray incidents of terrorism completely governed by Pakistan do happen, but they are taken care of. A lot of peace is happening, a lot of business is happening, a lot of tourists are coming there. The propaganda of Pakistan of being a blockade, lockdown, has been totally crushed. All the ambassadors and the high commissioners of various countries in Delhi were taken to Kashmir. They were driven through the Lal Chowk. Lal Chowk is the city center of Srinagar. They were driven through this. I have personally briefed them. European Union members of parliament were allowed to come to Kashmir. They again moved around freely. They were briefed. They met the cross-section of people of Kashmir, both the delegations, all three delegations. They met the school teachers, they met the farmers, they met the businessmen, they met the government officials, they met the artisans, they met everyone in the Kashmiri society they met. So there's nothing to hide. India's biggest strength is the transparency. And situation is normal. I'll just take a second on the security aspects. The team security forces, as we call it, that includes the Army, Jammu Kashmir Police, Special Operations Group of Jammu Kashmir Police, CRPF, the intelligence agencies, the civil administration. On 5th of August 2019, when government decided to repeal the acts of 370 and 35A, we had 2-point aim. And we had declared this aim beforehand. One was, there will be no civilian killings. And second was, the writ of the government will prevail. And there will be no collateral damage, there will be no burning of the shops or the buildings or the buses. No law and order situation will allowed to happen. No stone pelting will be allowed. And for next 4 months after 5th of August, not a single civilian was killed by the security forces bullets. Not a single stone pelting incident worth its name happened. The writ of the government was made to prevail. The implementation of these two acts of abrogation of 370 and other thing was the most peaceful period in Kashmir's history of last 30 years. And that is how the strong government made sure the strong decisions are implemented. I'm just flashing this, all these figures are on the net. Now, after 5th of August, this is the type of investments which are happening in Kashmir. This is the type of Jammu and Kashmir. This is the type of developmental projects are being undertaken. This is the type of infrastructure development is happening. This is the type of flip to the tourism is being given. Again, the government initiatives, because what is a common man wanting? Common man wants bijli, roti, pani, kapda, good education, good health schemes, good infrastructure, good environment to go about his business or his rozmarra ki zindagi. That is being ensured. Look at the last line. 11 airports coming up. AIMS, 2 of them. IITs, 2 of them. IIMs, 2 of them. Degree colleges, 54. Professional colleges, 11. Women's university. Because biggest hit was taken by the education. Any society where education is not good, the society's future is dark. So major initiative to make sure people of Kashmir and Jammu and Kashmir, they get quality education so that they can decipher from right or wrong. This fourth last point, market intervention for their crop. Kashmir is an agrarian society basically dependent on apples and other fruits. They used to be bought in bulk by the dealers from Delhi. The whole orchard is bought for 10 lakhs. That would mean he picks up the apples at 10 rupees a kg. He comes and sells at 300 rupees a kg in Delhi. Now this has been done away with. NEFED, which is a government organization, buys the apples from the farmer in his field at the rate maybe 5 or 6 times what it was being offered by the bulk traders. Money gets transferred into his account electronically. This is just one initiative I'm saying. That is how people are accepting this change. With this, I come to the end of my talk. It was basically to tell you about Kashmir's little history, UN resolution, Article 370, 35A, and government initiatives and how the peace is prevailing now. I'm open to questions. Aim was to give some time for questions. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much, sir. Would you be open to a few quick questions? Agar hum mic
The way you wanted.
hai na? We have a little time because we have just one more speaker after you before we get into the panel. So any questions? I can correct. Please have ADW volunteers. Volunteers, can you help me with the mic, please? Yes, here, I have a mic.
Sorry, I had to rush it because of the time. Otherwise, I generally take about 1 hour to explain Kashmir. And that's too less a time as it is. Okay. Yeah, you are audible.
Like why we have rushed to UNO for this Kashmir issue. In fact, Sardar Patel has a plan B for that. That is the first question. Second, we were offered this permanent membership of UN, whereas we have offered this to China before this 1960s, and then after we had got a war with China. So why our diplomacy has failed?
Okay,
and,
thank you.
And another question also I have. Let me ask.
इतनी हैवी पूछ रहे हो, दो तो आंसर कर लें तो.
Okay, sir.
Okay, gentlemen, first part I think I answered in my presentation. That time's government, for whatever reasons, they went to the United Nations. In the hindsight, I can only think because it was a new nation and they realized the United Nations is a new organization which has come into being, and charter of the organization is to resolve the issues between the nations without any bloodshed. So they probably went to the United Nations with that aim that it's a new organization, it will solve the problems. What United Nations did is a separate issue altogether. Now, second question about why we offered our United Nations permanent seat, Security Council permanent seat to China. My knowledge is as good as yours because I also Google, you also Google. So this is a historic thing which happened much before your or my birth. So they must have the reasons at that time, which I think I won't.
Okay.
My impression on that I won't divulge here.
Okay, the problems are still continuing.
Is there anyone else asking the question? If you don't mind.
Sir,
Yeah, we can give a chance to other person.
only
Don't
one-
mind, please don't mind. We are running short of time. There, piche somewhere.
Hello, sir. Sir, my question is, should we able to get Pak-occupied Kashmir back sometimes? Or
Sorry, come again.
should we able to get Pak-occupied Kashmir sometimes back, or will it remain a political tool between to be used between India and Pakistan?
So I think he's saying if we will ever get the Pak-occupied Kashmir
POK,
back. Did I
POK.
get that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lot of people in this country thought 370 will never go. 370 when the time came. So POK will come when the time comes. And it's a resolution in our parliament. So we are bound by being a good democracy and the biggest democracy, we are bound by our parliamentary resolutions. POK will come at an appropriate time.
Dhillon sir, एक last सवाल ले लें, if you're okay with it. One last question. Yeah, there was a show of hands there.
Preeti,
Where?
this way.
You want a question?
Right.
Okay, I'm going to give it to the lady. We need democratic gender representation.
Preeti, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Sorry, there was a move. I'm so sorry. Please ask.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Our last visit in Kashmir was in 2016 when, coincidentally at that time Burhan Wani was also killed. So what we observed in Srinagar was the public sentiment was strongly against the government. So has that, which is really surprising and sad to see, so has that perception changed after 2019?
Burhan Wani and incidents are Guzra Jamana.
Yeah.
Those things don't happen anymore.
I get it, but the whole sentiment that
Yeah.
the Indian government is against Kashmiris, you know?
See, this sentiment is a narrative building. This is a propaganda because what happened is it was very easy to send out a child, pay him 500 rupees, go and stone pelt, go and raise slogans. Here I must tell you what happened. A Kashmiri boy who picks up a weapon or becomes a terrorist, we did a study there over 1.5 years. 7% get killed in first 10 days. 9%, including that 7%, get killed in first 30 days. 17% get killed in 3 months. 36% get eliminated in 6 months. 63 to 64% get killed in the first year. That means 2/3 chances are you will be killed in the first 1 year, starting from day 1 till 365th day. And then we did another study wherein 83% of the people who joined terrorism were stone pelters at one time. That means today's stone pelter is a tomorrow's terrorist who is likely to be killed in the first year itself. And this is one part of Operation Ma which was being flashed. This was told to the mothers of the terrorists. This was told to the mothers of the stone pelters. Physically approached and informed कि ये data है. This had a major impact. 50 boys returned after having joined various terrorist tanzeems in that 1 year. And this sentiment or this show of sentiments by dharnas and mujahiras as they are called there This is not happening anymore. Stone pelting is not happening anymore. All these Jindabad, Murdabad are not happening anymore. That time, the radicalization of the Pakistan-funded systems were working. Those have been crushed. Hurriyat used to give a call, tomorrow is Band, irrespective whether you have to go for a flight or you have to go for an exam or whatever, and they used to be Band. Today, Hurriyat is a non-existing organization. Killed it. Okay, so that is what has changed Kashmir. Zurrat के साथ में, हिम्मत के साथ में, पक्के इरादे के साथ में. All these institutions of terror have been curtailed or cut down to size one by one. Today's Kashmir is a different Kashmir.